Great to have you with us. Joining us now, Senator, Virginia, Democrat Mark Warner, also Vice Chair, Senate Intel Committee. See, I told you if Mark Warner got reelected to the Senate in 2014, I told you would end up with one of the key committee chairs in America, right? Didn't I? And once again, my words, prophetic. I'm unbelievable. Senator Warner, good to have you with us, sir.
You know, the truth was, and I'm glad I got this job, but the Democrats are still crazy enough that the only way you get these jobs is by pure seniority. Senator Kolsky left. That moved Leahy. That moved Feinstein. That allowed me to take on what's been the most interesting assignment I've had since I've been in the Senate. But I'd love to claim it was your prophecy or my hard work, but it was luck of the dice.
Well, see, I had the whole thing figured out. That's why I backed you for re-election in 2014, because I knew all these people were going to retire. That's right. I'm the Truth Express. You got it. They're all right here. I predicted it. So the last time I was in a Senate Intel's office, I just got to tell you this quick story. I covered Georgia, as you know. Saxby Chambliss, great friend of mine. We go back a long way. Sit in his office after he had become Vice Chair Senate Intel when the Republicans were in the Senate in the minority. And he said to me, he was 69 at the time. He said, I'm 68 years old. And he said, I have never had this much responsibility in my lifetime. So obviously it's a big job. You've got a lot of things going on. Your staff has told me that you're spending 50% of your time now in Langley in one of those concrete rooms. And you made a statement yesterday, Senator. I want to read it. You made a joint statement with Senator Richard Burr from North Carolina, your colleague, who is the Senate Intel chairman in the majority. You said that based on the information available to us, we see no indications that Trump Tower was a subject of surveillance by any element of the United States government, either before or after the election 2016. Sir, tell us what you can within the boundaries of what you're able to say, what you're able to find out about this.
Well, I think we were all pretty surprised, or I'd say shocked, when the president 2 Saturdays ago put out this tweet saying somehow he had been the subject of surveillance by Obama, then went on to criticize Obama. I can't remember in past history where a current president has basically called out a former president in a way that was basically saying he had done something illegal. So immediately we asked for evidence. We got briefings from key intel people that Sunday on the talk shows. That former head of the Director of National Intelligence said it's just not true. We got reports that FBI Director Comey had said it wasn't true and had urged the Justice Department to say so. I respect the office of the presidency. I want President Trump to succeed. So I thought, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And maybe he's got some information as president that the rest of us don't have. Or maybe he misspoke and he could, reel it back in. And then out of the White House, we've seen for the last, depending on the day, some days they look like they're backing off the statement, and then other days they're doubling down. And we thought, the House Intel Committee, Democrat and Republican, said the same. The Senate is investigating the connections and ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. But we just were asked every day, and the chairman had actually decided this, and I think it was the right thing to do, that we just put out a simple statement and say, hey, we have seen nothing. President Trump could clear this up tomorrow. He could, if he's aware of evidence, he could tell the Justice Department to, at least brief us as heads of the Intel Committee. And people say, well, it's no big thing. Well, it is a big thing because you're talking about a claim against a former president that said he was bordered on illegal. And what I think the president doesn't understand sometimes is maybe us in America, we're kind of getting used to his tweets or exaggerations. when the President of the United States talks, especially if he talks about other countries, his words carry enormous matter. And he just can't be reckless with language the way I believe he's been in this case.
Do you think you're going to have the opportunity to have that direct conversation, Senator, with the president?
John, I don't know. I know this. I've been upset that there wasn't more public outrage. Again, Democrats, Republicans alike. This time it helped Trump, but the Russians are not Republicans. The Russians are not Democrats. The Russians are in favor of Russia. But the fact that they hacked into systems, released selected information at a certain time, that they had this massive, they had 1,000 internet trolls. Basically, these are computer experts working, trying to manipulate our news, trying to, creating a botnet where one computer can control 100 other computers. And then they overwhelm some of the algorithms on things like Facebook and Google. So if you were to Google, for example, election hacking, you wouldn't get the Godzilla of truth coming up as a news story. You wouldn't even get Fox News. You wouldn't even get, some liberal MSNBC story. You'd instead get Russian propaganda, RT News, Sputnik, and others. And we just want to make sure that Americans, on a going forward basis, if you've got news that pops up that doesn't seem real, chances are it's not real. And they are trying these same tactics now in France and in Germany in more obvious ways. And then we've got the question that we really just have to get the answer to. And if the president is accurate and nothing happened, I would think he'd welcome this investigation, where we've got all kinds of contacts between people affiliated with the Trump campaign and the Russians before the elections. They may be all innocent, but we've got to find out so that, again, just for the sake of truth, because if nothing happens, then I need to stand up on your show. I need to stand up on every radio show and say, President Trump and his campaign did nothing wrong. If the alternative is true and there was some level of collusion or cooperation, then we have to say that as well. When we're talking about our democratic process, when we're talking about the potential for someone to be compromised, the good thing about the committee I'm working on is it's mostly bipartisan. You're not going to see this turn into a food fight where, Democrats are saying one thing, Republicans are saying another. The vast majority of us on the committee have absolutely kind of taken a blood oath that, we're going to follow the intelligence wherever it leads.
Senator Mark Warner, we appreciate you being on with us. You are the vice chairman of the Senate Intel Committee. I appreciate the perspective here that you're taking and trying to get to the bottom of this. On the situation with the Russians, have you seen any evidence of any nefarious collusion between anybody associated with Trump and the campaign and the Russians, other than conversations that went on?
Well, John, it's too early in the investigation, and some of this is still within the classified area. My goal, we're going to have a public hearing from this investigation. It was hopefully next week. It's probably going to be the following week, just because of scheduling of witnesses. It will be more about the foundations. We have indication of conversations, meetings. I'm not at the stage yet where I can judge what happened in those meetings. And, this is the most important thing I've worked on since I've been in the Senate. We have a country, obviously, where people feel very strongly on both sides. And, the only way this committee is going to work is if it comes out with a report that's, if not unanimous, I still hope unanimous, but, where it's overwhelmingly both sides are willing to say, hey, nothing happened, or yes, something happened. And it's too early to tell. We're still getting, we've got a lot of the underlying intel that went into the January 6th report that demonstrated the Russian interference. What we've not got is all the information we need about these possible contacts. And it's a little, And I get the fact that, usually the Intelligence Committee will brief what's called the Gang of Eight. That's the Speaker and the Minority Leader and the Majority Leader, the Minority Leader, and the four chairs and vice chairs of the Intel Committee. So there are things that I know that at some point I hope all of the members on the committee will know, but they're so sensitive at this point. Obviously I can't share them with you, but I want to make sure that by the end of this report, I can at least share them with other members of the Intel Committee. And at some point, I think we have to share it with the public, because if not, no matter where we come out, people are going to say, aha, they didn't tell us the whole story.
So, Senator, are you confident that your committee alone can get to the bottom of this, or are you in favor of a special prosecutor and an independent commission like we had, like, say, on the 9/11 commission, sir?
Well, after 9/11, the country was in such shock, and the people that were put on that commission were well respected from both parties. I have no problem with a special prosecutor. If you go back to Watergate, there was a special prosecutor separate from the committee investigation. At first I have no problem on, if they talk about an independent commission or a special committee. My fear is, John, if we are to create a independent commission at this point, because the old independent commission law lapsed, we'd have to pass a whole new law. Both sides, and the president would have to sign it. Both sides would then have to assign people. And I'm afraid the people that would be assigned would be the hardest core partisans on each side.
Right.
The Intel Committee has generally been pretty darn bipartisan, and I've got 4 or 5 Republican senators. James Lankford, very conservative from Oklahoma, Roy Blunt, Marco Rubio, Susan Collins, who have, I believe in all my heart, will do where the truth lies. And I've got, very conservative Democrats like Joe Manchin and Angus King. I fall fairly much I get a lot of dagger eyes when I walk into the Democratic lunch sometimes, because, you got a third of the Republicans who just want this to go away, and you got 3/4 of the Democrats who want there to be some kind of indictment tomorrow. Neither one of those things are going to happen right away.
So, Senator, as a statesman, it sounds like what you're saying is you're confident that your committee can get to the bottom of this, and that we don't need any independent commissions right now, that the Senate Intel Committee, you feel with your staff and with the makeup you have, and, some of the names that you mentioned, I mean, these are true statespeople. Susan Collins, Lankford, Joe Manchin. I mean, this is a pretty solid group of people. Roy Blunt, yourself, obviously, Burr. Do you think you guys and gals can get to the bottom of this?
I hope so. Boy, oh boy, I hope so. Because, the sooner we get to the bottom of this, the sooner we can either get rid of this cloud over the administration, or, God forbid, we find something and we have to move forward. One of the things that concerns me, and this is just kind of the normal way the intelligence community operates, they are not going to be. We have to. It's been a fight to get access to all this information. These are kind of the crown jewels, and sometimes I don't mind sharing it with the so-called Gang of Eight, but sharing it with all, with all of the members of the House and Senate Intel committees. They're afraid of leaks. People's lives could be in danger who work for our country in other countries. So we have to take it with a seriousness. So far, we are getting most of the information. There's a lot more information we have to look at that, we just can't do our investigation without seeing some of the incidental information that may now be in the hands of the FBI. And obviously the FBI has got to make some judgments, because if there is anything happening, that's where it would be happening now, because that's where, if there's counterintelligence efforts, those are not, in dealing with Americans, those are not handled by, the CIA or the NSA. They're handled by the FBI. And we're kind of in uncharted territory. If you go back to the 9/11 Commission or Watergate or others, it's not a foreign power trying to interfere in our most democratic of all institutions, voting. So I'm trying to take this with methodically and with the seriousness it warrants. It does mean that I'm getting a lot of grief from both sides, but that's what you get the big bucks for.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Senator, but what you're saying, what I'm understanding you saying, is that you're confident that the Intel Committee, led by yourself and Chairman Burr, can get to the bottom of this, and you're suggesting that both sides breathe until you can get the facts out. And What I've also heard you say, and I want to get this straight, is that this is a bigger issue that you're looking at than just what was the extent of any collusion at Trump Tower. Maybe they were tapping Paul Manafort's phone. He also lived there, things like that. But you're also getting into the extent of interference they did with computer networks, with the bots and things like that in manipulating things. This is really a story that it's kind of out there, but we haven't delved into it to this extent. I mean, this is a serious matter that you're mentioning, right?
Absolutely, John. I mean, this is what the Russians, I've been starting to read kind of Russian theory of war. I'm going back and reviewing some history. The Russians have been great, much better than we have, at deception, misinformation for a long time. I mean, I think we all kind of grew up, at least I did, and you're not as old as me, but you remember communist propaganda.
Sure.
They just are good at this. And what they're doing in America, what they did in America, they're doing even more now in Europe. In France, they're even more blatant. Marie Le Pen, the very far right candidate there, they actually gave her campaign was in trouble, and a Russian bank gave her a loan. The French people know it, but how are they going to react to it? Macron, who is more the centrist candidate there, he said bad things about Russians, and lo and behold, there was suddenly a lot of bad email traffic about it. Remember, again, regardless of what you think about Trump and Clinton, we all remember the tape that came out about Mr. Trump, talking about women that was pretty,
right, Access Hollywood,
unflattering.
Yes.
I don't know if most of your listeners recall, but within 2 hours of that tape being released was the first release of the John Podesta emails that were embarrassing to Clinton. Mm-hmm. Now, it was more than coincidence that on the very same day the bad story came out about Trump, that somehow these Podesta emails that had been hacked into, we now know, by the Russians, were released. And they were released, it was so smart because they were released on like a almost daily basis, so there was this drip, drip, drip. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm not here to relitigate the election. Right. Mr. Trump is the president.
Right.
I just, want to make sure that people in our country feel, if they see something on the internet that seems too wacky, mm-hmm.
Chances are it's not true because mm-hmm. there was nothing. There's no indication in my mind that suddenly the Russians have decided they only like Republicans. The Russians have decided they like whoever is in Russia's best interest. Mm-hmm. And the things that make it more challenging is if the president should actually welcome this investigation because we're going to tell the truth.
Right.
And if there's nothing there, so forth. But then the president makes these claims like the Obama wiretap stuff. We've been looking. We didn't come out with our statement because we wanted to give the president the benefit of the doubt of either kind of giving us evidence or, as he's done in other cases, kind of backed off his statement. But it's been now almost 2 weeks, and that's why Chairman Burr and I decided, well, we just got to put out something here, not some long statement, but just say, hey, we've seen no evidence either. Paul Ryan said he's seen no evidence.
if you make those kind of claims as a president of the United States, you ought to at least have your Justice Department or somebody say, and here's some of the evidence.
All right, final question, sir. We're almost out of time. In your committee investigation, Senator Mark Warner, are you guys also going to be looking at the nature of these leaks? Like you look at the NSA transcript of General Flynn that got leaked. That was political, but in the future it could not be. So these leaks are an issue, right? This was
Absolutely.
not. This was not.
Absolutely.
This was not.
Anytime you leak classified information, that's a crime,
right?
And we should pursue that. It's just we have to deal with classified information. It's hard because at the same time the American public has a right to know what we're doing, but we've got to protect the sources and methods and the people who work in the intel community. I would say this. I hope, I know for a while there were some Americans who at first thought, well, maybe this Julian Assange guy and WikiLeaks, they're doing the country some kind of service.
Mm-hmm.
I think Julian Assange is a criminal and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. What he has done in some of his reported recent leaks, and we still don't confirm any of this, but has really put Americans in harm's way. And, I believe personally we ought to be a little more aggressive on some of these items.
All right. Well, look, Senator, we're out of time. I really want to thank you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I really want to thank you, Senator, for that insight and the statesman-like approach that you're taking with this. And I personally, and I know my audience, feels much better that you're in charge of this committee, and we're confident that you'll get to the bottom of it. And we appreciate your work.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you saying that because it's hard. It's a balance here, but we're going to do what's the truth. And if the truth is nothing happens, I will go on your show and say all of these claims were false, and there is no cloud hanging over the administration. I still want this president to succeed, but we got to get to the bottom of this. So wish me well, because there's a lot of incoming from both sides.
I do, and I appreciate how you've stood up to it. And I'm 59, so we're kind of the same generation, and I certainly remember back in my day in Washington, beyond the politics, you had statesmen. You had Scoop Jackson. You had Howard Baker. I mean, you had people that they put politics aside when it was the right thing to do for the country to get to the bottom of something. And that's, I think, one of the things that we're missing. And by this conversation today, it appears to me that you're trying to reestablish that, sir. Well, thank you.
You put me in good company. I hope I get to earn that. Let me do this job well, and maybe I can earn some of those comparisons. I don't deserve those comparisons yet, but I hope to earn those comparisons.
Thanks for being with us, sir.